Good mental health is, I imagine, the ability to successfully manage your everyday tasks and be able to navigate the challenges that may come within that.
Good mental health is being able to enjoy life to its fullest without, the feelings of anxiety and the symptoms and all of that, anxiety, depression.
The ability to be open and the ability to feel understood and listened to.
I personally feel that's a deficit model, that it's focusing on the idea of deficiency, and that's not always the case. I think there are circumstances and situations in life that cause people to react in a particular way. Yes, it may then have an impact on their behaviour, but I think it's unfair and unreasonable to attribute mental health failings to somebody's character. That doesn't sit comfortably with me.
I would not like to think that I'm thought of because I have a mental health problem or illness, that's a flaw in my character. And I feel very strongly about that. I feel strongly about that because things happen to you in life. It doesn't mean that that's a flaw in your character. Life happens and things happen, and that takes you into a place where you might suffer poor ill health with your mental health. I don't believe it's a flaw in your character. I feel quite strongly about that.
There's different levels of mental health. There's low level and there's different sort of to a higher level as well. So I don't believe it's a character situation. It's more of an experience.
I think we all fall within that spectrum. It's neither good mental health or bad mental health, but we all fall within that parameter. How we manage and how we deal with our own how I, Cynthia, would deal with my mental health may be very different from someone else.
I think the community loses out, because where we could come alongside, where we could embrace, we tend to distant, because once it's down to character, then there's a blame on the person. And I think sadly, our culture is sort of biased in that direction. And what we do here, I hope that in time, we will help towards changing that.
I can't be the only one. And I'm telling my story to help others.
My name is David Grant and I'm a carer for my wife who has psychosis. When she was diagnosed, the first initial diagnosis was postnatal depression, because it was that close to having the birth of our second child, our daughter. So they initially thought it was postnatal depression, but they soon found out that it wasn't postnatal and it was psychosis. And for those who don't know what psychosis is she hears voices. And with those voices, compared to how she is now, it was a lot less severe. So she had a break between the voices. She was able to distract and cope with them a lot better than she is now. They're very much entrenched in her whole being. And sometimes I think, would she miss them? It's been there that long. Would she miss them? Because when suggestions are made of this could help you, there's almost a resistance or a non-believing attitude. So you get the impression that as she's seen this as a comfort, it's almost part of her, and without them, would she be able to function? Because she thinks it's the Lord's voice.
My name is Clarice Morgan, and I would say my experience with mental health is I have a background with being a actual daughter to someone that's gone through mental health, but also a matter of working alongside clients that deal with mental health within Soup Kitchen, within within my work as well as any environment that I go into. So having a parent that deals with mental health, I would say it has developed me as a person in terms of the dynamic changes that we have to balance with when there may be a time that they have a low moment or a good time, but just also understanding and loving on them even though they may suffer, because everyone's normal, everyone suffers with mental health, and it's just the severity of what it may be. Living with someone, you have to kind of just know what to say, know what to do, and just allow them to just feel comfortable, I would say.
My lived experience, and I've reflected a bit lately on it, is it probably started as a really young girl. I came from a chaotic upbringing, and I struggled throughout the years at school. Not necessarily academically, I was really quite bright at school, but in terms of a family foundation, it wasn't there. And then that struggle continued into adulthood, really. And I was probably, when I had my first breakdown, I was told I probably had lots of small ones that probably happened as a child. And I can actually pinpoint times in my childhood where I could now say, yeah, it happened there. Yeah, it happened there. So that carried on with this fight to keep well and to keep my head above water. Because actually, when you're not well with mental health, for some people, you feel as if you're paddling. You're paddling to keep going. And that carried on into adulthood. I did really well. I went into nursing, got the necessary qualifications, but I really struggled. But I hid it. I always was hiding this struggle with my mental health.
I personally remember several years ago when I had a mental health issue. I call it that now because I was not myself. And sometimes we are afraid to recognize what's happening to myself as a mental health issue because I don't want people to think there's something wrong with me. And I remember as a pastor when going to one of our ministers forum on the district, and we had our meeting like we normally do, and at one stage I just felt, no, I cannot go on like this. I felt like I was on another planet looking into this meeting at myself through a telescope, but it wasn't me. It was just a presence there. And I just said to my colleagues and my district pastor, something's not right with me. I'm not able to do my work effectively. Where my spirituality is concerned, I just feel very dry. I cannot function well at home because I don't feel that my thought process is what it is supposed to be. I'm getting to the point where I'm not able to trust my decisions anymore.
Probably when I was in my late 30s, I couldn't struggle anymore. There was this heavy weight. I used to feel heavy all the time, that I was carrying like bags of potatoes and you would have to drag me along. And then one day I was a ward sister by this time, and I had an episode where I just couldn't cope anymore. And I considered taking my life. And that was interfered with, thank that person who came and stopped me. I was going to jump through a window. 2008, my mother died, and I had another dip. And that's when I joined this church. In terms of had another dip, my friend said to me, I think you need to go to church, before something happens to you, Bev, And she comes to this church. And that's when I entered here, George Street.
I wasn't that keyed up on mental health at the time, but I know myself, and it happened over time. So it wasn't anything that allowed me to snap. It was a gradual thing. So understand that all of this is happening in the community and creating a place where people feel comfortable to be You know, just like you would walk in your doctor's surgery, you know someone there is going to help you. You're not going to be judged for having this infection. You're not going to be judged for having this virus or whatever it is. Somebody is going to help you. And that is the atmosphere that I would like for our church to foster. That is what I would like to see other pastors take on. And so the church could be in the community, that hub that people gravitate towards when they start to feel that way. Or you may have somebody that you're caring for and you want some information, and we would like to be able to help in that way.
I think it's hard to talk about because of the stigma in the community as such. And when you join or become part of a congregation, you don't want anyone to know that, I've not been at my best in terms of my mental health, because people will label you. That's one part of it. And I think the more we start to talk about it, and this is where we started back way in 2014 as a group of women, to start to talk about it, to share it amongst the congregation, there's more understanding of the whole subject of mental health and your well-being. It's not assigned to any one group of people or any one person.
My experience with and the understanding of mental health within my church environment, I would say it's had its good days and it's had its bad days. And I would say I put that down to a matter of people's understanding of mental health. And there can be a lot of stigma and discrimination towards it. Just the sheer fact of not understanding it, and a matter of a stereotypical, judgmental culture.
The church, the support is there, in prayer, in just phoning me and visiting. But the thing with mental illness is, because people don't understand, especially with psychosis, like schizophrenia, and the examples of schizophrenia that people see is when someone goes and injures someone else. So they believe that is the case for everybody who's got schizophrenia. They could just snap and use a knife or a dangerous weapon against you. So people, as my wife got worse, the visits dried up.
You can feel closed, you see, and you don't really want to sort of express how you feel, because you can feel that you're going to be judged, and you feel that that you haven't got it together, and your coping strategies are quite low in that sort of sense. So so there is a perception that you feel that people are looking in and having that judgment.
Culture does play a great role, and culture and tradition, in the way we view mental health as a Black majority church. And I think we are top heavy with the cultural notion. I mean, speaking as someone who grew up in the West Indies, someone was with a mental health, the stigma, the word that you used was mad. And for me as a boy, it means they don't have any sense. They will never be better. You can't connect with them. You should be afraid of them. They are a threat. All of these stigmas are around them. So, and I think it poses a great problem for our church in trying to not just reverse this, but get people to unlearn these notions in order to start to embracing people with mental health. And thank God. We have started to do that as a local church, but I think the next ripple is to get our community to start to embrace those who are suffering from some sort of mental health.
And I would like to add to that those responses are not generally steeped in malicious behavior or malicious thought. I think it's just basically a lack of understanding. And so when people don't understand something, they become very fearful about it. So I think I'd be quick to balance that argument by saying I don't think it's people being particularly malicious in their responses. It's just, as I say, the lack of education.
What Time to Change has done for us is given us some tools. So they've equipped myself, Cynthia. We've had quite a lot of training from them. We've got 9 or 10 what are called Time to Change champions within this church, maybe more, that were equipped through this journey from 2014 by getting specific training about how to talk to people and to be aware and be sensitive to somebody who might need some support.
I'm passionate about helping others with mental health issues or well-being issues. It's because I've had a lived experience in that as well. So it's about sometimes it's about like I know it can be sort of difficult sometimes for a fish to explain to a chicken what it's like in water because they're two different. So if someone's actually been through and experienced certain aspects of low moods and anxiety, then I feel that I've got something to offer.
From this Time to Change campaign that we're doing with understanding mental health, I would say is a matter of just knowing that there's something going to be out there to have your voice to be heard, really, and not feel that you have to hide away from this mental health like taboo topic.
I'm understanding more now, especially doing this video, that this is what it's about. You've gone through your journey, and now you need to share your story, because there's others out there and they've got it worse. There's always someone who's got it worse. As much as your situation is bad, there's someone worse. But you have to be that helping hand to say, look, I'm there with you, and whatever I can do and whatever ideas or suggestions I can offer, we're going to get through this.
In terms of changing the outlook of mental health, as our local church has made significant strides, I have to be very clear here that I haven't been the person that's necessarily pioneered that work. We have a local women's ministry, and they have been very forthcoming in making sure that mental health is high on the agenda of our church priorities. And so our two local women's ministry lead and her team have worked extremely hard over the last 5 years to make sure that we start to address this big issue and start to put some provision in place to address the needs of our congregants and also the local community.
I am the extremely proud pastor of a mental health conscious church.
One of my key visions when we were talking with Time to Change and what we'd like to see as a product of our coming together, and I mentioned that I'd like to see a mental health cafe here, and I'm thinking most people have thought about it and said it was a very good idea. So I just envisaged that it will be a sanctuary, not just for the community, but even for our own people. I think whilst we're looking at the community, we start at home. So I'd like, there to be space for the elderly, for young people, for children to be able to come and engage in sessions and spaces where they can just talk about some of the issues they're facing. That would really be, that would just be the icing on the cake for me.
A simple conversation sometimes makes such a difference to someone's tomorrow.